Hi, everyone. Today on the podcast, we have Robert Moore the third. He's a fellow podcaster, and he's also a mental health advocate. So, Rob, welcome. Welcome to
Hey,
the podcast.
yeah, thank you for having me, man. This is a pleasure, man. This is awesome.
Yeah, if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself, because that's like a super quick intro that I gave you. It didn't do it justice.
Yeah, no, well, there's not that much more to me. My name's Robert Moore the third. I am a local Charlottean here. Been here most of my life. Father, husband, and honestly, all the other titles sometimes give me anxiety just thinking about the other titles that I carry. But honestly, most of them are just all to, at the end of the day, carry out what God put me here for. So it's a pleasure to be just a husband, father, leader, and whatever else I may be to other people.
Okay. So today, how would you identify yourself? Meaning, like, what is your identity? Who are you today, as compared to, who you were in the past? But
Wow.
like, what are you doing, and who are you?
That's a great question. Wow, what is my identity? So I have to start with saying that, like, I remember there was a time where my identity really was like rooted in what I did. So I would have answered that question by saying, "Oh, well, I'm in IT. I'm an IT manager, and I manage other people's work, and I basically keep the company running." Now I recognize that my identity is not what I do. So I have had to kind of shift the way I look at who I am and understand who I am outside of everything I do. And I tell people the best way to consider that is if you were to strip everything, if you were to take everything off of yourself, like all your titles, who you are to others, and answer who you are if you had none of those things, that normally begins to point you to your true identity of who you actually are. And so I would say who I am is I am a son. I am a leader. I am called into the lives of people to share and bring light into situations where people, most of us, I have, sat in darkness sometimes and felt as though I was all by myself. And so I feel like where God has me now is He's put me into a place where I can be exactly what He was when He was here, which is to be a light, to be someone who can point others to our Creator.
Okay. So knowing who you are now, if we go back, way, way back to your childhood, who were you then? And if you could give us kind of the story from then to now, and I'll kind of jump in with different questions along the way.
Yeah, no,
So
okay.
like let's say middle school, or if you want to start even earlier, um, what was your life like then? Let's start with that.
Yeah, yeah. So, and that's honestly where most of it starts. I mean, I recognize how early childhood, even though I used to have like patchy memories of what my childhood looked like and what I experienced or what I didn't experience, or no way I experienced that. But as I spent a lot of time in a therapeutic setting with my own therapist, I learned a lot about myself that I had chose to forget. And growing up, I grew up with my mother and two sisters, and living in a house where you constantly felt like you had to either fight for attention, you had to fight to be seen. Being the only male in the house, it felt like I was missing certain parts of me or certain parts of who I was and what my identity was. So I was looking for that from the world around me.
Mm-hmm.
And man, when you give the world like a space to tell you who you are, then they're going to tell you exactly who they see you to be or who they want you to be, whether it be to make them comfortable or whatever the case may be. So as time went on, I recognized how my affirmation came from everybody around me, inside my home and outside of my home. And so that just began to groom me into who I saw myself as, because I didn't know who I was. I mean, identity, I believe, comes as it's given to you, which is why it's so important for the people that are around you to be there to turn you back to you and say, I can affirm you in this moment, but if you're always seeking affirmation from me, then you're basically going to be moved based on how I see it. And sometimes you have to be okay with saying, I'm okay with this. I'm good with how I am. And so I think that was a big part of just my childhood, growing up and beginning to experience things that started to construct me, almost like a Rubik's Cube of, okay, no, they don't like the way I talk. All right. Okay, they don't like the way I look. Okay. And everything constructed me into a person that I wasn't put here to be, but it was the person that other people needed me to be, wanted me to be, or felt like they were more comfortable with.
Okay. So 2 questions related to that.
Mm-hmm.
One is, isn't it natural for everybody, like all kids, as they're growing up, they're kind of learning, like especially younger, like elementary school or even before that, where they're just learning what the world is like, what the family is like, and they don't know any better. So they're looking for that affection, looking for that reassurance of whatever they're doing that's right or not right, and then adjusting to it. So I guess the question is, isn't that natural? And then kind of related to your childhood, you mentioned you were just surrounded by women. Was your father in your life early on, or was he not? So sorry to
Okay,
throw
multiple
both of them
questions.
at
All
once,
right,
but-
okay, yeah. So I'm going to start with the first one. So I recognize that all of us are imperfect people trying to live in a world where we're trying to make things perfect. And just to even think about that, okay, I'm imperfect, but I'm trying to make things perfect. But in saying that, I also recognize that I was groomed, I was raised by an imperfect person who wanted the best for me. And so when I look at that, I recognize that I took on a lot of my mother's imperfections, a lot of her hurt. I took on a lot of her trauma, a lot of what she had been through, the experiences she'd been through. She kind of like just inflicted on us, not purposely, but subconsciously, recognizing that because I went through this, because one time the bus, I missed the bus, I'm going to make sure you guys are always at the bus stop on time. And so it's just little things like that that allow her to raise us. So we're like, okay, well, I don't know why it's that serious to always be at the bus on time, but it's because of what she went through. So when you go through a life with a person who is imperfect, raising you based on their experiences that were imperfect, you grow up being a person who doesn't understand all the whys, but you know that, well, it's because she told me so. And when I may have asked why, it was because I told you so. And the answer is that I don't want to think about the experience I went through to tell you why it is. So it's because I told you so, which is why I've learned that the word why is so important. But to answer your other question of why did I grow up, where was my dad in the whole story? Well, my dad, it wasn't like he was dead or that he was somewhere and I didn't know where he was. My dad made the decision in his own imperfections to live out the life that he felt was best for him. And because of his own imperfections, his own experiences and trauma, he decided at a certain point that the relationship with my mother wasn't in his best interest for whatever reason, And so he and my mother decided to split, which is funny. I hold a memory of being, I'm to this day, I'm still working in therapy and stuff to try to understand why I carry a memory of my mom taking me back from my dad and me crying and reaching for him. And I don't know why I carry that memory, but I know that God is continuously using that to work in my life to be able to better understand myself as I peel back layers of my life. But my dad was a pastor, and I'm the third, so I was named after him, and I was also named after my grandfather. And there are parts of my dad and my grandfather that I carry, and that have been a part of my life, even though I wasn't in my dad's life. A lot of him and his experiences and why he moves the way he does, they are parts of me that I carry that I've never been able to explain it or understand it. As I grow and as I peel back layers of who I am, I recognize and I can look back and see my grandfather and certain things I did like, wow, I see why he was that way and why I'm this way now. But my dad and I, we're still. It's funny how we're doing this dance where we're constantly wanting to get to know each other. I think the last time I talked to my dad, he was like, he said something to the fact of, well, you say that, but you don't really know me that well. And I was like, that's it. That's the point. I don't know you that well. But as I say things, I'm working off of what I may assume. And it's better to ask you, why is this? Why do you feel that way, or why do you think that way? Mm-hmm. And it does matter. So, it's a struggle, as we try to build that relationship and understand each other at 40 and him at 60. So,
have you asked him why he named you after himself and your grandfather?
Ooh, that's heavy. Well, I think it was customary in his time to like carry on names, and him being a junior, it just, because I remember when I had my son and he was like, well, you're not going to name him the fourth, and I was like, no, it stops here. And I'm glad I did that, because I recognized that I wasn't just stopping the name from being carried on, I was stopping a lot of the identity that had been handed down to me from my father and his father. I was stopping that at my son. So there's a lot that has been imparted in my son. There's been a lot that I have done to repair the brokenness and the trauma that I carried that my son doesn't have to carry. And even though my son has his name is almost like a reverse of mine, is Justin Robert Moore, he doesn't have to carry a lot of the hurt and the damage and the trauma that I carried, that my father carried, that his father carried, that I can recognize. So just in conversations with him, sometimes I'm like, wow, it's not what I'm saying, but it's how you see me moving, because it's less about what I say, but it's more about how you see me walk through life now that allows you to say, okay, so I don't have to look for that, or I don't have to conform to this. And so it's beautiful watching him now in life say, I'm glad I stopped that with me. Yeah.
So I guess that's a different way of looking at identity or family kind of legacy. Some people will look at it like it's a positive thing where the father or grandfather wants to pass down the name. But your view seems to be the opposite of like, you're seeing kind of the trauma, the negative things in the family name, and you wanted to stop that and kind of restart the identity.
Right. Yeah, the truth is that I love people that have tradition. I love people that have it's traditional to do this, but a lot of times the tradition is based on the things that everybody experienced that they enjoy. But a lot of times we don't have the full context and the full story to where these traditions came from, and the hurt and the pain that may have begun things, or that people go through just to keep these traditions alive. And so I recognize that tradition is great, but there is also an importance in making sure that you understand the full context, the full story to a tradition, because I am in a stage and a season in my life where I'm recognizing that it's also okay to start new traditions. It's also okay to change the way things have always been done, especially when we don't know the why. I don't understand why we do it. We just do it. And it's like, okay, but maybe it's important to understand the why to why you're doing it, so that you can also understand why it's okay to change it, and why it's okay to start new traditions or change the way we've always done it. Just because it's been done that way, it doesn't mean that it has to stay that way.
Right. So going back to school, you went to Olympia High School, right? Is
Yes.
this the North Carolina one?
So I went to Olympic High School. Actually, my son goes there now. It's in North Carolina. It's actually right in the same. So it's crazy how I grew up in South Charlotte. I went to Olympic High School, And now my son, we've moved back to the South area of Charlotte, and now my son goes to the same high school, runs for the same track team. I was there at his track meet last night. It's just kind of surreal, like watching him run for the same track team. So yeah.
And if I understand it correctly, Olympic High School is one of the top high schools in the nation, right? Or not? Or
yeah, sounds good to me. I'll take that fact.
No, but I heard, maybe it's a different one. But I've heard that in Charlotte, like maybe it was a different one from somebody. I heard that it's like one of the top. Is it like not a trade school, but a school that has options to kind of like explore different trades and so on?
That's true. Yes. And so that has changed a lot from when I went there. It wasn't quite the same school when I went there.
Okay.
And it was still a great school, but just to kind of like frame it better, I graduated from Olympic. I went there my senior year, 12th grade year. My mom finally allowed me to step away from private school to go to a public school. Mm-hmm. And it was just my choice. It was like she finally allowed me to like, Mom, I really want to go to public school. I'm tired of wearing uniforms and I want to see what it's like. And honestly, I believe it was probably I've always said that it was one of the best things that I could have ever done, because I went from a sheltered environment of like, let's keep you guys in a box and protect you from the world, to an environment where it was just like fully open. Here we are. Welcome to what the world looks like and everything that comes along with that. And there was so much I learned in that senior year that then prepared me for stepping out and going to college. Mm-hmm. And so great experience. I learned a lot. There were some things, no regret. But there's some things that I'm like, wow, if it hadn't been for that happening, I would have never known how to handle myself in this space, because everything that I experienced before I went to public school was kind of just like, well, we don't want to talk about that. Oh no, like sex and stuff. Yeah, no, we don't talk about that. Let's just stay focused on what God wants for us. And I look back on all that and I think to myself, everything is in context with God. God has a season for everything, and God doesn't shy away from what He provided us, which are things like sex and different things that we experience as adults in the right context and time frame. And so understanding those things and understanding what He has for us, it gives us a better understanding of how He wants us to do it, instead of just shying away from it like, okay, well that's a little uncomfortable. Let's not talk about that. Like because then it allows, what happens is if we don't talk about it, then we're going to give space for others to explain it to us. And then when you allow the world to explain things and topics, they're not going to have the same context that God has for us.
Yeah, definitely. So back in high school, what were you like? Like, what was your personality? What was your circle of friends?
Man, you gonna make me out myself. Okay, so I was very much a nerd with the voice that made no sense for Charlotte, North Carolina. Like it's hard to explain. I think others could explain me better, but I was born with a voice that didn't look like the surroundings. So growing up in Charlotte, people would hear me talk, and the first question they would ask me are, where are you from? And I would say, I'm from here, like all of us. And they're like, no, you're not, dude. Where are you from? Stop playing. And it was always that back and forth.
But what do you mean by that? Like, what do you mean by that voice? Like, you sounded, like, physically sounded differently? Or what was it like?
Yeah, now would be a great time to, like, bring in somebody who grew up with me, because they you know how the first time you hear yourself when you're recorded, mm-hmm. and all your life you're like, I sound just like you guys, but then you hear yourself recorded, you're like, that's not me. Stop it. And that was kind of my life. I thought, and I heard what I heard everybody else. I had the same, y'all and everything else, but there was something about my voice that stood out, and because it couldn't be explained, it was attacked. And so people used to be like, why do you talk like that? Why do you say it like that with that dialect? Where are you from? And so what it told me was that it wasn't right. So I started to change and conform my voice to sound more like everybody else. I used to talk lower, and I used to kind of like shrink back away from everything because I felt like there was something wrong with me. If I'm the only one that sounds like this, then it's got to be me. It can't be all of them if they all sound the same. And so I recognize how early in my life, in high school, in middle school, those are the pivotal times where people begin to recognize and strip away, not purposely, but strip away the gifts that we've been given, the things that are unique about us early in our lives. They begin to recognize and see that that's different. Okay, well, different means weird, because if everybody else doesn't have it, if everybody else doesn't do it, then it's got to be weird. It's almost similar to a story my mom used to tell me about her eyes. My mom has green eyes, but growing up in her time, it was like, what's wrong with you? You got cat eyes. Like, nobody else has that. So there must be something wrong with you. But you look 20 years later, now everybody has color contacts and everybody wants green eyes. Everybody wants blue eyes. And so it's just recognizing that what you think is broken or wrong about you because of what everybody else recognizes, it's special, and everything that's special, whether it be our gifts, whether it be the things that we recognize and see differently than others, God has a plan for it. And I never would have recognized it then. It was more of an attack thing. It was more of a, I got to change this about myself. I can't talk like this. I got to hide. I got to do other things. Like I was a bully. That's the funny thing about myself. I was a bully. I was probably about 100 pounds, and I was a bully. Imagine the smallest guy in school talking junk. He was like the little dog that like barks and like nips at your heels. And then when you turn around and you jump at him, he runs off. Yeah, that was me. Every time I spent most of my afternoons after school running from people because I had talked enough junk to earn a fight at the end of the day. And it wasn't much of a fight. It was more of a beatdown, which is why I was so fast, because I ran. But that was kind of like what my early high school, middle school years looked like.
But as far as your circle of friends or your circle of influence, people that had an influence over you, what was that like? Who were those people, or what kind of thoughts, ideas did they have that they were kind of imparting on you, whether it's conscious or subconscious?
Honestly, I was a loner. I didn't really have a circle. I was the circle. Like my circle, and my sisters would contribute to this. My circle was going home and honestly doing what they did. There was a phase, I'm not ashamed to say it now, there was a phase where if we were playing Barbies, we were playing Barbies, because it was almost like I didn't choose them as my best friend, but they were the only ones that were still sitting here, and they were like, well, we'll play and let's hang out. And it was like, all right, well, this is my circle. These are my friends. And so there were people that slowly became a part of my friends, but it was almost like we were the friends that were kind of like pushed on the outside of the circle, the ones that nobody wanted to be friends with. And so we, I would say one of my childhood best friends, his name is Thomas. Me and him, I remember the day he used to get picked on, similar to me. And I remember stepping in, and I was just like, I was tired of seeing people mess with him, man. And he was tired of people messing with him. And that kind of brought us together, because it was like, yeah, like, I'm sick and tired of people messing with us all the time. And that's where we kind of grew a bond of like, maybe we're not the first choice in everything. When basketball games, we may not be the first pick, but we still matter. Like we still matter, and there is something in that when there are a lot of people who feel like I was invisible in school, I didn't matter, because a lot of those people get to a point where when they feel like nobody sees them, maybe if I make enough noise, the whole world will now see me. And sometimes that noise is not always a good thing, because what thoughts can impart on your mind in those moments where you're like, if I make enough noise, it may not be good things that come from that. And so I recognize how important it is for people who aren't seen or who don't feel like they matter to know that they do matter. And it doesn't matter whether people around you in your circle see that or see the value, but the value never left. You were never invaluable because others didn't see that value.
Yeah. So sounds like as far as school friends and so on, you had a small circle or almost no circle.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Say how it is.
what about from like adults, and especially getting into that senior year and then going from there? Who was giving you advice in terms of like you should go to college, or you should go get a job, or you should go into a military or do something else? Like, what kind of advice were you given, and from whom?
So, I would say early, like we're talking maybe like senior year, like right before going off to college and different things, and even in college and all. I think that was one of the biggest issues. I lacked a lot of mentors. I lacked a voice in my life that would tell me what was best for me, not because it was what was best for them, but what they saw in me to affirm me of things. And so because I lacked that, a lot of my conversations or wisdom was imparted by the voices in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that is not always a great thing when your head is not in the right head space, when you're not healthy mentally, which is why I am so big on, mental health, not just from an adult standpoint, but from early childhood, because there are times when people don't always have the right healthy people around them that can impart the right knowledge, the right wisdom on them. It could be wisdom that comes from my own. Like, here's an example. That's just how it is being a man. We have to suck it up and push through it. Life is going to be hard for us, and unfortunately nobody's going to love you, and it's okay. That's how we all experience life. You just got to provide for your family. You got to take care of them, and that's it. You die a happy man because of what you've done for everybody else. Now, I could have gotten that advice from my father or my grandfather. And then that would have put me on a path of, well, I guess I don't really matter. As long as everybody else is happy, as long as I've provided, as long as I've taken care of everybody, then life is good. And as long as I is another big one, as long as I stay busy and I look busy, then that in itself is the value of being a man. And not getting that advice might have been a great thing. But honestly, over time, I started to look around at all the men. Since I didn't have anybody to show me what it was to be a man, I began to look at different. And so the people that I look to, the people that look attractive, the people that look like they were doing it, I picked up on certain tendencies from them, what they may be saying, how they presented themselves to the world. And that wasn't always what was healthy for me, because who I was made to be wasn't to be them. I was made to be my own unique self. I wasn't made to be like other actors or other socialites or other influences that are out here. I was made to be uniquely me. But if I'm taking my cue from them, then I move the way they move. And basically, I am just a duplicate of them. Forget the guy created me. He might as well have just done a copy paste and created another them. And so when we move the way others move, and we take the advice of what others are showing us, because as I said, we're learners based on what we see, not what we hear a lot of times, then you begin to slowly tear away who you are to be a version of them. And I think we both heard this before about, the way Michelangelo was made, the statue Michelangelo. They asked him how Michelangelo was created, and he said, I began to chisel away everything that wasn't him.
Yeah.
And that's how he was created. But when you look at the statue, it's like, yeah, but he's naked, though. And that's the thing. There are times where a lot of us have to strip down and be totally naked, not actually.
Metaphorically.
Metaphorically. You have to get naked so that you can understand who you were created to be, and not all these things you took on. like, okay, well, I want to be a piece of him, and I need to be a piece of him, and I like the way he dresses. You know, you start to realize who you are once you strip away every piece of who you've created yourself to be, whether it be to protect yourself from what you went through, whether it be to make sure what happened when you were a middle schooler or when you were 15, it never happens again. I'll never let them break my heart again. So I'm taking on this thing, you know, Andrew Tate seems to be a guy who never gets hurt, so I'm going to take on his mentality. And you start to take on the mentality of people, and next thing you know, you realize, wow, I become a shell of myself. I don't even know who I am anymore. I have become a piece of him. I've become a piece of him. I've become a piece of them. And it's like, I don't, and that was a big part of my story. And that I got to a point where I had become everything everybody else needed me to be, what they thought was best for me, what I felt was best for me. And when you eventually realize that I've made a gumbo of everybody, I don't know who I actually am anymore. And there's so much in this pot, I don't even know where to find me. And I think that's when life just, you know, when you realize that you got a pot of gumbo and you don't know where you are in there, you got to throw the whole pot out. And life, that's not a popular thing to do at 40. To throw your whole gumbo pot out. I mean, like, you spent 40 years making this gumbo. Why would you throw out the whole pot of gumbo? And it's like, because you realize that I'm so lost right now that the next best thing would be just to go ahead and throw in the towel, because I am so confused. I thought that life was supposed to look this way. My expectations was that if I did this and that and put a little this and made myself more like him, then I would experience what they're experiencing. But I may have gotten the success of life. I may have gotten nowhere, but regardless, it doesn't look anything like he's making it feel. Because the truth is he told you all the good parts of everything he's experiencing. He didn't show you the downside to it. He didn't show you the dark parts of it. And so now as you experience that dark part, you're sitting there like, okay, this wasn't talked about. Nobody told me that it would feel this way. Nobody told me that there would be emptiness in this. And so in all of that, you're trying to make sense of it, all while still carrying this facade of yourself. Like, this is heavy, but as long as I get the pleasure of it, as long as I get the success of it, as long as I get all the great outcome of it, then I'll be okay, right? But like, no, it's this, the way it's being carried right now is not level. And I'm hurting more than I'm happy about what I've achieved or what I've gotten. And so that's just where it got to me. It got me to a point where I was like, well, if this is it, and this is how it looks, and if it doesn't matter whether I'm happy, if it doesn't matter, you know, I'm just supposed to provide and take care of and smile and mask how I feel and not talk about what's going on in my life and how it's playing on my mental health, then why do I even matter? Why do you guys need me here? And so, yeah, I got to a point where I was like, I think you guys would do just fine without me. And honestly, I'm tired. Like, I'm tired. That's the best way to put it, man. Life.
How old were you when you felt that way?
You know, I believe I began to really feel that way like later in my 30s, and then it got heavier. The closer I got to 40, it just got heavier, and I tried to mask the hurt by you know, covering up with addictions that I was running to. I ran to addictions from drinking, which was never really my thing. So that was like a quick, like, buzz to, like, just take me away from how I felt for only a few hours. But then, you know, I'm right back in the game again. I would run to women. I found myself, like, just, like, masking my hurt by trying to uncover myself and be seen in certain areas. If I put myself around other people, maybe I can show them a little bit more of me, and I can see if I can expose or be like talk about my feelings and all. So I traded. I think my wife put this way. She said, "You became an emotional prostitute." And I was like, wow, that's a bit harsh. Sheesh, wow, like what? Why would you say such a thing? But no, as I thought about it, I did. I would mask my emotions in most situations, and I would offer my body in exchange for just being seen.
Yeah. So you were looking for like affirmation from women, like to affirm you as a man or as a human, like as somebody of significance.
I think that I honestly, I don't even think that it was so much the affirmation, which is great, but I think it was sometimes also to be seen outside of what I provide. Because I was so heavy on like, if I provide this for you, then I'm valuable to you. If I do this for you, then I'm needed. And so I was so heavy on just like, well, what can I provide for you so that you see me as a value? Because I don't feel like I'm enough, and I never have. And it took me a long time to realize that, to uncover the fact that when you didn't feel like you were enough, you needed others to show you or tell you that you were enough. So you did everything to get that affirmation from them that you are enough. But when others don't know you're lacking in that area, then you're doing everything for them. They're taking it like, okay, thank you. But you're still dry. And all you're doing is you're getting the affirmation of, wow, that was great, man. You just, you gave me a great time. Or, man, I appreciate the gesture. Man, I appreciate the gift. And so I'm just pouring, and I'm looking to be filled up. But the way I needed to be filled, I was never going to get that from them. And the truth is that I didn't know how to give it to myself. And that has been the most beautiful journey that I have been on, with realizing that who I was looking for all those things from, what I was looking for, I was looking in the wrong people, in the wrong places, with the wrong people. And it took me having almost like a year and a half sabbatical from just life, the way I saw it.
So let's pause there and go back to high school. So in high school, it sounded like you didn't really have that grade of influences or influencers on you, and you said you were kind of making the decisions yourself. Whatever was in your mind, you were going with that. So how did you decide to go to college? Or did you go to college right after high school?
That's a great question. Okay, so I don't think I've ever talked about this. Okay, so, and I'm sure a lot of people will resonate with this. College is not always the choice that a lot of people immediately are like, yeah, I'm going to college, especially when you don't have people around you that went to college or see the importance of college. So for a lot of us, college is an afterthought. We finish that year of, we graduate high school, we throw our caps in the air, we're like, yeah, done. And everybody all starts to disappear. And you're like, wait a minute, where y'all going? Oh, yeah, we're going to college. Oh, everybody going to college? Okay. Well, yeah, I'm going to college too. Where am I going to college at? And you realize that everybody else was preparing to go off to college. Everybody else was doing things when you just thought that everybody was going home and playing video games. There were some people that were going and they were taking the practice SAT. They were going and they were and there's some people that don't even want to go to college, but because my mother and father went to Stanford or Yale, then they're making me go to Stanford or Yale. And it doesn't matter what I want to do, I have to go here because this is where they continue to pay a check, and this is where they met each other, and they want me to have the same experience as them. And it doesn't matter what I want to do, this is what they want for me. And so it goes both ways in that there are a lot of people that went to college that never wanted to go. And sometimes you see that when they get to college. There are some people that just went because, well, there was nobody else here, so everybody else went to college. So I don't want to be on the guy who just sat here at the house. I mean, I could be. Those guys exist. But it was like, okay, well, let me make something of myself. So maybe I'll go to college. And there was even a time where I thought about the Air Force. And And that was, I think that was why I was in college, because I'm like, wow, these bills are stacking up, you know, like I don't have anybody that's helping me. And the Air Force or the military became an idea, and I ended up shying away from that. Matter of fact, I had a lady who I appreciate to this day, you know, telling me that the value and what I thought I needed and my knee jerk reaction to go to the military was just that. It was a knee jerk reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And she saw that wasn't, even though she was a recruiter and it was her job to recruit me. I remember her telling me to this day, like, hey, look, I want you to go sit on this. I mean, like, I would love to have you, you know, join, but I feel like you're making a rush decision because you don't see any other way. And to this day, I appreciate her telling me that. I appreciate her going against her job to let me know that she saw more value in me than to just be in the military. And so, you know, it's crazy how there are pivotal people in your life. Even though I didn't know her, and you asked me if I had any influences in my life, I would say she was one of many who.
It's interesting. Just to interrupt you here, I had another person on the podcast, and they were considering going to Air Force as well, and they had a similar circumstance where the recruiter, instead of recruiting them, they were telling them why they shouldn't join the Air Force. I wonder if that was just a tactic where they really want to get like people who are fully in, or whatever the reason is. It seems like Air Force was one of the top military branches when it comes to military, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's SEALs and all that, but
right.
But just comparing the 3 or 4 branches, and it seems like they get so many entries from people that they have too many. So they almost, like, instead of recruiting, they're like discouraging people.
And that could be the case. You know, I if you haven't noticed already, I'm a man of faith. I believe that God works in many ways. I believe he works through people, even people that don't necessarily believe. And yeah. I believe that there are opportunities where we have gotten so far off course of walking with him that he uses people to kind of like guide us back in. And they may even say later on, I don't know why I did that. It just came to me, and I felt like I would not be able to sleep tonight if I told this person differently. But there are moments where we are realigned, or at least shepherded back into the direction of where he's trying to take us, because we've gotten so far off course that we may be about to make a decision based on an immediate feeling or an immediate gut thought of, what am I going to do if I don't have the money to pay for this? What am I going to do if? And so we make these I mean, even in business, think about it. Things happen at work, and sometimes our first quick decision is an impulse based on how we feel, instead of sitting with it for a second, recognizing the feeling, realizing that, okay, I am nervous right now, I am angry right now, but allowing that, even in feeling that, allowing that to settle before I make the next decision that may be made out of anger, or maybe made out of fear or anxiety, because I feel like that is so many people's lives. Of, I move based on how I'm feeling at the moment, and I understand how important feelings are. I'm not the guy who's going to tell you, man, suck that up, man, forget how you feel right now. Feelings don't matter. They do matter. But it's how you move based on recognizing that I do feel fear right now, and I'm going to realize that in this fear, the decision that I make next may be based on fear. So the fear is now guiding me into my next decision. Because I felt fear, we're going to move in fear now. Every decision I make is going to be moved based on stress now. Stress is guiding me through life. And imagine getting older and realizing that all life has been made and all my decisions have been led based on stress. Stress took me here. Fear took me here. Life told me this. And so you look back down that path and realize, I didn't make any of those decisions. It was important that I felt it, but I didn't make any of those decisions based on a clear mind space. I didn't surrender a lot of my worry and pain and fear and different things to somebody who already wrote my story. And so it was in realizing that I have moved based on my own past pain and the fear that created and the anxiety that created. I let that guide my whole life. Literally, I was shepherded by fear, by pain, by hurt. It shepherded me until I said, enough's enough.
So the feelings are important in the sense that they're indicators for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're valid in terms of what we're feeling, what kind of input we're receiving. I think the challenge is, like what you were mentioning, is not to react to those feelings, but to use them as those indicators, as feedback, and be like, okay, well, why am I feeling this way? Not that I should have like a knee-jerk reaction to that feeling. Like, okay,
Right.
I'm fearing something, so therefore I'm going to just react in fear, not even thinking about it. But more like, okay, I'm fearing things. Why am I fearing things?
Yeah.
Or I'm angry or whatever. Like, why am I angry? What's causing that anger?
You know, I think a person that said it one time, and it just made so much sense. I love the way he said it, and I love to cite or reference people, and I can't remember who it was because I do listen to so many good, insightful podcasts and different things now. But a brother one time said that it is important to have your feelings on the train of life.
Mm-hmm.
Just make sure that it's not the first car. It's okay to put your feelings in the caboose, because they are along for the ride, but they shouldn't be in charge of the direction. And I was like, ooh, wow, that was good. That's good. And so I recognized that my feelings are supposed to be along for the ride. They're just not supposed to be leading my train. They're not supposed to be leading and directing me in every decision and choice and movement I make in life. Because, like you said, they are an indicator. It's like a fire alarm in your home. It indicates that there is smoke.
Yeah.
Now, imagine if you didn't have that, or imagine if you, I'm gonna step on a lot of toes, huh? And you're smiling because you know what I'm gonna say. For those people who have the fire alarm in their house that continues to beep, that you just ignore it, that is a perfect example of what it is to ignore your feelings. You know it's beeping. You hear it beeping, but you have gotten to the point now where it's been beeping for so long, you don't even hear it anymore. You have ignored it completely. And so now you're moving through life, and people have come over, and now they're sitting there experiencing your feelings and how your feelings have adjusted you, and they're listening to your feelings, and they're like, wow, I wish they would just put a new battery in there. But you don't even hear it anymore because you've completely ignored it. And now you're in life living out of those feelings, out of that hurt, out of that breakup, out of how life treated you, what that boss did to you. Yeah. And you won't recognize the fact that your smoke alarm is going off and you just need to put a battery in it. You're just ignoring it. Oh, man, eventually I won't even hear it anymore.
Yeah.
And that's a great analogy of how people move. I never said that before. That was good, though.
Yeah. So going back to college, so it sounds like you decided to go to college just because, hey, my peers are going to college, might as well go.
Yeah, something to do. It's like, what's next? Oh, so, we all had to go to high school. Okay, cool. What's next? Are we all going to get jobs? Are we all just going to hang out? No? Yeah. Some of y'all going to college? Okay, at least the ones that I look up to or the ones that I'm following, it's like, okay, so y'all are going to college. All right. So like somebody get me into college. And that was, that was a pivotal point when I do remember my dad stepped in and was like, okay, if he wants to go to college, I have a couple connections due to like just, ministry and different things where, I could send him. I remember the option was I could send him to Livingstone or I could send him to Johnson C. Smith. And because I had seen what Livingstone looked like, nothing against those Livingstone Bears, but, I was just like, Johnson C. Smith is like 7 minutes from my house. I think that would be a good look for me. Why not? Let's see this college life. And that was another great chapter of my life. It taught me so much in college. It's crazy how life continues to be a build-up. So what you experience in high school and middle school and all those things, that next chapter of college has a way of intensifying or adding to what you've already experienced. It has a way of continuing the story that you've already begun to tell yourself of how I'm seen and who I am. And if things don't change, then I'm the same person. And honestly, college created a whole new version of me, because I would say that the guy who graduated high school got to the same point that the guy in his 40s got to, where he was like, I don't like me. Mm-hmm. I'm not good enough. I don't matter. These people don't even care about me. So I took on a whole new persona in college, and I was like, cool, I'll configure me again to never feel those ways again. I'm changing my Rubik's Cube. And I step into college a whole new guy, but this guy was moving out of, like, he was a defensive player. I don't have any feelings. I don't have any cares. You can't get to my heart because I've hidden it behind a brick wall. And so who you get now is who I am. And so I lived out of this guy from college all the way till, he went all the way to my 40s, because he was a protector, as though I looked at it. He kept his feelings and how he felt and what he thought, and he kept all that hidden. I was stoic. I was like, so you don't feel anything? I don't feel anything. I mean, I'm good. I mean, I don't know why you're tripping. And that guy was a piece of work, because even though I felt protected now, I was masking. What I didn't realize is that I was keeping everything locked in. Everything I did feel that I didn't want anybody to know about, I would hide it in a jar. I would stuff it down, stuff it all in there. I'd put the lid back on and I'd hide that away. And over time, that jar got full. But that didn't stop me from sticking stuff in it. I was just mashing it all in there, and I'm screwing the cap on, and I did that for a long time. And yeah.
So that we'll talk about that a little bit, like where all of that came to a head, basically. Mm-hmm. But before that, in college, you went into, or you got an information systems and engineering degree. How did you decide to go into like the IT or the technical side of schooling?
Okay, so for the record, I just want y'all to know that he did his homework on me. I didn't tell him that, because I'm sitting there like, oh, okay, it's one of those interviews where you have gone and looked me up a little bit. Okay, so yes, the reason why I got into information technology is right before college. I think it was my senior year. My mom, a friend of hers, gave her a computer. Mm-hmm. Now, we had never had TV or electronics like that in our house. And I would like to say it was because we couldn't afford it, but no, my mom was I don't know what denomination you call this, where they don't believe in TVs.
Like Amish?
Yeah, maybe that's it. Mom, were you Amish? And so we didn't have a TV in the house, but my mom kept books around us. Now, I would like to tell you that, yes, so we just read all the time. But no, I got to a point where I despised books. I despised the way they look. I despised the way they smell. I didn't like books at all either. And so, but I never filled my empty time with TV. So I had to keep myself entertained a lot. And so a guy one time gave her a computer, because we were stepping into like the 2000s, and people had computers now. People were writing papers on computers and all. And so, as fascinated as I was with what was on the screen, I was more fascinated with what was in that box. Mm-hmm. And I remember, like, I would knock on it, and I was like, man, it seems really hollow in there. And, like, at nighttime when people would go to sleep, I would, like, take a screwdriver, and I'd open it up, and I'd be like, whoa. And I'd put it back together, and then the next night I would open it up, and I'd be like, whoa. And I started, like, popping out chips and all. And I realized, oh, these things come out. Okay. And so I became hugely fascinated with what was inside that box. Mm-hmm. And so when it came time for me to just think that, like, high school was it, and everybody ran off to college, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go to college. I didn't know where I would go. So, I had those first 2 years of core classes where I got to thinking, and I'm like, well, I had this huge fascination with this computer. Like, maybe I'll take up computer. I mean, maybe it'll just come easy to me. That was a lie. It didn't come easy. There was a lot of math. There was a lot that I was like, I want to be a computer guy. I want to open up computers, and you guys want to sit me down and have me do math and have me do these subjects that don't make any sense to me. I just want to play Oregon Trail and open up computers. And at that time, Oregon Trail was that thing, if you remember, man, like if I could get them safely to Oregon Trail, man, I was killing it. So, I just wanted to play Oregon Trail and take apart computers. And that was not what college was about. So I want to spend another time. This is break segment of thanking those people who helped me through college. If it wasn't for you, I would have never made it. So thank you so much. You guys know who you are, and I really appreciate you to this day. That hasn't changed. But yeah, I spent 5 years in college learning math and learning different core components of technology and things like that. And finally, I got my degree. And I got a lot of other things along with that degree. I had a lot of good times. I pledged a fraternity. I did a lot in that 5 years, which is why it was 5 years and not 4 for those who are probably sitting there like 5 years. Yes, 5 years. I had a lot of good times. And I experienced life. I experienced me. A lot of other people experienced my hurt and my brokenness, but I was just living out of like what I thought was normal. Mm-hmm. This is just who I am. So
you found out that you like more hardware rather than software side.
I am definitely a hardware guy. Okay. I enjoy what makes a computer work. I am the guy who the software guy comes to when he can't figure out why his computer won't come on. So it gives me value. It used to give me value. Like, so wait, let me get this straight. You know how to write all the programs in the world, but you don't know how to get this computer to come back on. It affirmed me. It made me feel like I mattered. And when you go through life and you don't feel like you matter, and people are coming to you for something, I got a high off that. Like I'm talking about, like it was like I was literally running to a drug every day of my life after high school or after college to fulfill a need for other people, because it was like, so you need me? I matter? Man, listen, I can do this all day long. You want me to fix a problem? I'll fix a problem. And I did it.
How deep did you get into the technical side of it? Did you get into like the memories, the ands and the nors? And
so I was a break fix guy. I've been a break fix guy. That's how I looked at myself. That was my identity at one time. I looked at myself as a technician that could fix whatever your problem is, whether it be in the corporate environment or when my name got out there and people who were home users saw that I was really good. I became just as good outside of a corporate environment as I was inside of a corporate environment. So I stayed very busy. And I ran to a high of people needing my services to create a space of like, I am needed by people. People need me. I matter. And that became an addiction. I was addicted to that feeling of being needed by people. And so in exchange for you killed it. Man, you did so great. How much do I owe you? I exchanged everything for that feeling. And some people can resonate and say that, mine wasn't computers or it wasn't the break fix, but maybe mine was other things that I was addicted to, that I ran to make me feel good, to make me feel important, to make me feel like I mattered or whatever it may be, to make me feel less pain, to make me not have to focus on what I'm going through. But that is the life of so many of us, that we find that one thing that just changes everything, that just gives us a sense of like relax or just necessary. I'm necessary to somebody. I matter to somebody. I'm seen, or I can distract myself from the pain I've been carrying for so long. And that becomes just what we need. Even if we hide it, it becomes what we need. And so that was my regular thing. I didn't really get into all like the building of chips, but I was the guy who had a level of service along with the personality that when they got together, I was like the IT guy that everybody loved, not just because I could service them and I could fix the problem, but I also had a great personality. It was just something about me that people loved. And so I saw that I could use it, and I used it in a manner, but not realizing that it was always a gift I had from day one, that a lot of people kept trying to tear off me. Like, why do you talk this way? Why are you so loud? Why are you this? Why are you that? And there were just pieces of me that I had just like been like, well, because I don't want to be too loud. I don't want to be heard. So, but I realized that, like, okay, wow, people like I'm doing what he does, and he's better than me, but why do you prefer me do it? Like, so there were just parts of me I couldn't explain, but I realized there was something there.
So you went through college, and eventually you landed a job at Coca-Cola. I don't know if that was right after college or you went through some kind of transition there.
Well, I didn't talk about all the little small jobs, so like I keep a lot of my details out there. So yes, that was good research. The rest of the stuff you'll never find. But no, I like right after college, I hit the ground running. It was either the military, or it was get out here and get a job. And so I hit the ground running, and I didn't just hit one job. I hit multiple jobs. I had a third shift job, and then I had a second shift job, and I would get about 5 hours of sleep, and I would run to that second shift job. Leave there, go to the third shift job, get off there, go to sleep, and sometimes I went to sleep, and then I would start all over again. And I ran that because there was this thing of like, okay, I got these student loans, I got this life that I got to live, I'm never going back home, so I have to make this work. I have to do this. I don't want to go back home. I don't want to go back to the old life, because that old life was Robbie. And now I'm living out of my Rob phase. And so it was like, I've got to make this work. And if nobody can do it if I don't do it, it's up to me. It was that mentality that I had subconsciously programmed, that as a man, I have to do this. Nobody else is going to do this for me. Nobody else can make this happen for me. So I became the ultimate hustler. And I'm talking about like I said, I was doing third shift, second shift, and in my second shift, I learned about creating my own little side business of doing IT work for other people. That's where I learned about that, and then I started picking that up, and so I'm doing a little bit of that, and so life was busy, and I had put my career and my job and everything first, and then everything else came up underneath that. But it was like money, career, it's up here, and whatever else trickles from that. And so there were dating in there, but you come second to my job. And so that was just my life for a long time then during that point.
Okay. And as part of Coca-Cola, you spent like over 16 years there. So was that like a constant for you through that period of your life?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I've been there for 16 years. Yes, it's and honestly, I couldn't pick a better company to have been at for 16 years, because there are so many values and parts of that company that I didn't know would be so important to my life now. There are so many freedoms in that company, Coca-Cola Consolidated, that allowed me the freedom to not only be my authentic self, but also to spend time not only during the business day, but during breaks, where I can spend time talking about my Heavenly Father, talking about God, talking about things that most companies and most places are like, yeah, if you could just keep that outside, we would appreciate it. We don't want to steer the ship either one way. We just want to keep it in the middle of the road and keep everything on the outside. And so working there for 16 years, and I would say the first maybe like 14 years there, that didn't matter me. It didn't matter one way or the other. It was like, oh, well, yeah, cool. Their values are around, not only growing profitably, but also one of our biggest values is being a cornerstone or man, I can't believe my mind just went blank on it. But being a God-centered company, being a company who seeks God in what we do and how we do it and how we show up. And so to be a part of a business like that, when God is important to your life, it's cool because you can do things like you can put yourself in communities. You can create communities at work where you're like, hey, look, if you all want to just, like, we have a afternoon meeting where we're going to talk about what God's doing in our lives. Or I got a 2:00 meeting where I want to bring a couple other people who feel the same way and want to just kind of like fellowship and talk about what God's doing, the struggles they're going through, some of the things that are happening in their life. You know, I think this would be a great time to do that. And man, like when I say that has been great. Like the people that are at my job that gather with me sometimes, and we just talk about like how sometimes we feel like we're lost, we're in the darkness, we feel like God has left us, we feel like he's kind of abandoned us, but have others to encourage you that the season that you're in, it may be similar to mine, but I know that God is still there. I still feel his presence. I still know that he's not going to take me around it, but he's going to take me through it, but he's still there, and everything's going to work out for my good. To have people in community with you that can do that, man, listen to me. That's probably one of the best bonus packages you could ever throw in an employee. That's like benefits that a lot of people don't ever experience because they don't have that sense of community at work. It's just I go, I work with these people, then I leave. I don't know what they do. I mean, like I know Dan has a daughter who plays softball, and I know Shelly has a son who plays basketball, and but that's the extent. We stay really surface level with it. We don't wait a minute. You're going through things at home, okay? Well, like if you could just leave that in your car, don't bring that in here because we don't want to experience the pain you're going through. And that's how I used to think. Like, oh, I'm going through a breakup right now. Or, oh, I'm, okay, let me leave that on the door, at the door. I'm going to mask myself. I'm going to walk in here and smile and let everybody know everything's good. And then I would get off work. And when I turned that smile off, I didn't realize how heavy it was to smile all day long for people. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize it until I got in the car and I turned the smile off. And I felt like I had been lifting weights all day long. It was so heavy. So I went home and I went to sleep because I didn't have any strength to do anything else. And it's nice to be able to bring the full you into work sometimes. And sometimes it's not pretty. And leading people from that space, leading people knowing that you have a life outside of here. And sometimes your life is going to come in here and it's going to have a whole tantrum attack. And you need people who aren't going to be like, hey, look, I don't care how you feel right now. I don't care what you're going through. I just need you to perform. No, there are moments where people need somebody to meet them where they're at. And right now, where you're at, it's not pretty. And this job doesn't matter if you can't find yourself out of that darkness. Because as long as you stay in that darkness, what happens next, you're not going to consider this job. You're not going to think about what's going to happen afterwards. There are so many people that have had blow-ups that after the fact realize, shoot, I don't have a job now. I just lost the only source of income because I allowed my feelings that weren't being tended to finally just, all right, feelings, you got it. Have at it. And it's just like, and I'm going to let all of y'all know how I feel today, starting with you. And you know what? If I get angry enough and I let this simmer long enough, I might do worse. And we've seen those things in the news and society, how people never learn how to sit with their feelings and address them. So they allow their feelings to address them and address everybody. By living out of those feelings, by now moving out of that feeling that was just ignored for like 5 years. I let you say what you want for 5 years to me. You talk crazy to me, and today is my day. Feeling, go at it. And you experience those feelings and those things that have been bottled up so long. So when you meet people in their feelings, when you say, hey, look, it's okay to be sad right now and hurt by this. It's okay to be worried about how you're going to spend your holidays, or worried about how you're going to pay this next bill. It's okay to feel that. And I'm going to do what I can, not to like pay the bills or take care of the situation for you, but to sit with you in this. Because when you sit with somebody else and you're not sitting alone in situations, it doesn't change the situation, but it allows you to realize that I'm no longer by myself. I'm seeing right now.
Yeah.
They may not understand the full capacity of this, but at least they're recognizing that it sucks, that it's happening to me. And sometimes people just need somebody to say, that sucks that it's happening to you. Not so much, hey man, forget that, forget them. But no, that sucks that it's happened to you. And forget all the other pieces of it. But I hate to see that happening right now. Can I pray for you? Can we both, can we talk about what it's telling you right now? And maybe I hate advice sometimes, but I realize that perspective is everything. And sometimes fear makes you look at things, as I said earlier, fearful. But if I can speak to you from a different perspective, from over here, not looking at it from a fear lens, then I can help you maybe see things that you might just be able to adjust in your own Rubik's Cube to say, wow, I'd flip that around, and you know what? That was because of fear. Maybe if I turn this here and turn that there, I can change the way I'm going at this and maybe go at it from a different approach that provides me a different outcome. Yeah. And so I've realized that right there is where and how people need to be met. And as a leader, when you meet people that way, that's not a severance package. That's not a part of their benefits, but that's a leader who cares, not just about themselves and what you're providing this company, but a leader who cares about you and cares about what you're going through, because you're no good to this company. You're no good to anybody if you're broken.
Yeah. Is that a culture within like the corporate environment, or is that a culture across all their, I don't know, branches or whatever else is going on?
I can't speak for the entire company. I would love to say that it is a culture that should be across the entire company. It is a culture that everybody should adapt and step into. But see, I would then tell you that, okay, if I told the entire company this is the way you should address people, the only way you can sit and meet people sometimes in their own brokenness is when you address your own brokenness. Because if I sit with Sally and she tells me that she just went through a breakup and that she was treated this way, that may trigger me about my own breakup that just happened. And now I'm like, you know what? Forget him. You can do better. Let's go egg his car, because I wish I had egged my ex's car. And so now I'm matching her hurt with my own hurt because she's triggered me. But see, when I've addressed mine, then I can recognize that, okay, I show up differently in this setting now. And that's why I realized in order to lead people, sometimes you have to start with leading yourself back to things that you haven't addressed. It starts with you digging below the surface to know who you are and how you're going to show up for other people. Because when you're in, I would say, in charge of shepherding people, imagine if you were a drunk shepherd and you're leading sheep across a mountain and it's getting real thin now. And you're sitting there focused on the fact that you just need one more drop of drink. And next thing you know, you look down and you done lost the sheep. You done fell off. Oh, well, I can get another one. And you're like, okay, well, you sit there and you're just like, man, like we shepherding these sheep. But you're hurt, you're broken, and you're leading these sheep with your hurt and your brokenness. And you're sitting there drinking and trying to, hey, man, life happens. It comes at you fast. Hey, look, well, lost another one. It came at him fast. And you're like, but that's how life is, and sometimes we fall and sometimes but it's all because of your own pain. Mm-hmm. And I've experienced that. I've experienced managers' pain before. I've sat with a manager, a leader who I think is a great leader. But when he went through a life situation, a life-altering situation of a divorce, what it did to him was it brought him down. It broke him. It humbled him in so many ways. And he couldn't focus on the job and the task that he was given to lead. And there are times when people need to realize, I need to sit this one out. I'm hurt. I need to go and mend my own wounds before I can really help you guys or be who you need me to be. You need me to be a leader who's going to lead you and lead this team. But right now, I'm broken. I'm hurt. And I could ignore it, but we've already talked about what happens when you ignore the battery and the smoke alarm. Yeah. Other people experience it.
Right. So after college or during college and into where you are today, you said you were hustling. How did you decide to go into corporate environment or go into a job where you're an employee versus I want to start my own business? Like, have you had thoughts of like starting your own business versus just working for somebody else?
Yes, I did. I've always considered like just branching out and starting my own company, which at the time, I think I called myself Moore's Computer Consulting. And thank you to all the people who supported me over the years. But what kept me from doing that was fear. Mm-hmm. Honestly, the fear of like not being successful, the fear of not succeeding. Fear kept me from stepping into something that I might have been great at, that might have been really just the focal point of my life and a focal point of my career. I allowed fear to drive me away from that idea. So I would do it on the side, but I would never fully step into that. And there's so many people that are in that space. It's like, I don't want to take that chance right now because of what happens if I fail. So failure is keeping all of them steered back into the safe area, the safe zone of where like, okay, I'm safe over here. I got a regular check. They appreciate me. I got benefits. I don't know what it looks like out there in the unknown. That's uncomfortable. And then they look at all the other people who have become a success and they're like, I want to be like him. What did you do to become successful? I took a chance on me. I don't like that advice. Next, what did you do to become successful? I took a chance on myself. Okay, so clearly all of you guys have just done something that I can't possibly do because I don't know how it's going to look. But that's just it. You don't know how it's going to look. You're fearing the unknown.
Right.
You're fearing what's uncomfortable. There was a time when I'm sure you went through the same thought process of like, it's comfy over here. They've got a nice check. I know what I'm going to make over the next 5 years. I know exactly what it's going to look like. That's comfortable. I've taken care of everything. But it's in those moments where people say, you know what? I recognize that fear is keeping me from this. And if I can address the fear, where the fear is coming from, why I do fear it, then I may still step out there in fear, but it's not the same hold that was keeping me bondage to even take the next step. And yeah. I think that's important.
Yeah, so stepping out of your comfort zone, basically.
For sure.
Yeah. So you still working at Coca-Cola, and you came to a point where it sounded like you've had enough. Like you had certain patterns repeat, like you mentioned, from high school going into college. You can call it recreated yourself, but you've recreated yourself based on somebody else's image, like on what you thought other people wanted. Mm-hmm. But you came to a point where you got tired of recreating yourself in that way.
I don't even think Go ahead.
You mentioned the 1.5 year of like sabbatical, so we'll come back to that.
Yeah. So I don't think it's even that I got tired of recreating myself. I just realized what these creations of myself were doing and how they were like I said, there was a moment after high school where I was like, I can't keep living this way. So I adjusted myself. I figured that if I adjust myself to what was safe and I remember even thinking to myself, I was like, dude, you'll never make it in this life. They're going to chew you up and spit you out. So I got you. You sit this one out and I'm going to go from here. And I realized that in my 40s, I was tired of doing that. I think the reign that I had from 19 to 40, it just, when I look back and looked at like the damage I had done to other people, then I looked at the damage it had done to me. I realized that, and I tell people, I know this is a hard word. I hated me. Mm-hmm. I hated me so much. I hated what I had done. I hated who I had become. I'm talking about like the level of emotions that just poured out of me when that cap flew off and everything just poured out. The level of emotions that I couldn't keep down anymore. It's one thing to feel things, but I realized that I can tell you how I feel right now, and I can do it with a straight face. Or I could tell you how I feel and then show you the emotion that comes along with that, and not care or worry about what you may do based on the fact that right now I'm sad, or I am hurt, or I am tired, and I'm going to lay down and take a nap right now on your podcast, or I'm going to cry right now. And that's not to make you uncomfortable, because that's what it does for a lot of people, but it's because if I don't cry, then I am expressing the feeling, but I am not allowing that feeling to now be showcased or express the full feeling with the emotion of it. We're good at expressing anger. Anger is allowed as a man. I am mad and I'm going to show my anger. But if we're too happy and we start to giggle, imagine you looking at a man, what you giggling about over there, man? Like, you giggling? Like, women giggle. Because see, we'll freely give that emotion to another gender, but that we're not allowed to giggle. We're not allowed to cry. So we go with the safe emotions. Anger is a safe one for us. Men are angry. We can showcase anger. But if I am so tired and I hate myself so much that I can't stop crying, I'm not going to hide that anymore, because I've hidden it for so long. And I realized the enemy had his way with me and kept me in prison and in bondage to a version of me that he sat back and laughed at, because that construction was all based on the initial pain and hurt that now created this version of me that I was living out of. And I never addressed that pain. I never addressed that hurt. So imagine carrying hurt from your young years, your middle school, your high school years, all the way up to 40, and you finally like looking at it all spewed out all over the place, and the people you've hurt because of this hurt. So now, like, my hurt didn't just hurt me, it hurt everybody that I touched, everybody that came in contact with me. I damaged them in a way. I inflicted my own hurt on them. So now they can carry that hurt too if they want to. But it wasn't their fault. Just like my hurt, a lot of my hurt wasn't my fault. But it was my choice, and it was my job to deal with it. I just chose not to for so long.
Yeah. So related to this, you grew up with a father who was a pastor, right? You grew up in a so-called Christian family.
That's where we're going now, huh?
And through your life, you kind of went astray, went away from that, right? And then you came back. So what is that story like? What was it like growing up in a Christian family? Why did you leave? Why did you come back?
Okay, well, see, I was going to share this. I was going to save this for my book, Jerry, but like clearly, I'll write a book on something else. No, so, okay, wow, okay. I shared this. You've probably heard this before. The way I would frame it, growing up with a father, without a father who's a pastor, the way I have put it is that it was like growing up with a person who would give you his name but didn't want to have anything to do with you, didn't want to come to your games, didn't want to spend time with you, didn't want to give you the time to recognize and pour into you, didn't want to affirm you, didn't want to let you know what it was to be a man, even if it was from a broken space of being a man. And then you look at his friends and you're like, oh, Oh, so you friends with God too? Well, you know what? I don't want nothing to do with neither one of y'all, because when my dad and God are best friends and neither one of you want to be a father to me, I'm good. I'm good with being fatherless. I can do this perfectly fine on my own. And so even though my mom was still in church and my mom still, kept us in that environment, my back had been turned from the day I realized that my dad and God wanted to have nothing to do with me based on the story I told myself. I told myself I couldn't see God any different than I saw my dad. And so because of that, I didn't want to have anything to do with either one of them. And even though my dad was in and out of my life, and there were times where I would spend with him and my brothers and my stepmother, there always felt like there was a big wedge between our relationship as a father and son. Mm-hmm. It was more of he's the guy who created me, and when I'm around him, I know that his most of his time is catered to the church and to preaching and different things like that. And I'll take whatever he gives, but I don't expect much from him. And, I would be lying to tell you that a lot of that has changed, but that is still the journey that I'm on of getting to a space where I stop running from the relationship I need with my dad and running to him. And I've had conversations with him where I said, I needed this from you. Like there was one where we had one night where something happened in my life and I called my dad and I said, I need to see you. And it was weird because it was like, why call him? But I called him, and what I needed, because of what had just happened, I needed a hug. And I was like, well, how hard is that? But see, growing up, and at a certain point, your dad no longer feeling comfortable or knowing how to hug his kids, and you needing that still, I needed that. Mm-hmm. And so I get that this may make you uncomfortable, but I need this embrace. I need this hug. And I'm sorry, however that may make you feel. But it's funny, I told him, I said, man, listen to me. On site, every time I see you going forward, I don't care if it makes you uncomfortable. I'm going to take a hug, because I realize the embrace that men need from other men. Man, listen to me. I've run to women's embraces plenty. But the embrace that we need from our fathers or father figures or men in our lives, it's not the same. It's important. It's so important. The affection from another man, men being okay to say I love you. That's it. I love you. Men being able to embrace and hug other men. It almost, some men, it's like, yo, that's weird, bro. That's sissy. No, man, listen to me. I promise you, deep down up underneath those lines and those feelings that you have, there's a little boy inside of there that wished that his dad would hug him right now, mm-hmm. that wished that his dad would tell him he's proud of him, regardless of what he does. Because I recently unpacked that on my podcast with a friend where I said, the fact that God was proud of his son before he did anything, when he got baptized, before he even began his assignment of the mighty works and the miracles he did, he let his son and everybody else know that I'm proud of you. This is my son in whom I'm well pleased. As men, we need that affirmation from our fathers, not because of what we've done or what we're doing, but simply because that's my son. You don't got to do nothing else. You ain't got to show up. You don't have to perform. You don't have to follow in my footsteps. I'm proud of you. That's it. Proud of you. And you may even ask, why are you proud of me? I'm proud of you simply because you're my son.
Yeah.
And I think if more men dug below the surface, they would realize that a lot of what they do, their drive and everything about them, has been to seek the affirmation of the man or men in their lives that they want to show that I did it.
Mm-hmm.
I was successful. I achieved it. You told me I'd never be able to climb that mountain, and I did it. And imagine climbing that mountain and the man in your life is just like, oh, that's cool, man. Why don't you go climb another one? That breaks something in you. That right there has a way of breaking something in you, and the pain that comes from that brokenness will now be carried by you up the next mountain and the next mountain, because you don't quite know how to address that hurt. It hurt so bad that I did all that to show him. I didn't even care to climb the mountain. I could care less about that mountain. I did all that to prove to him. And so I'm going to live my entire life out of proving to him that listen to me, I'm the best mountain climber you've ever seen now. You'll never find another mountain climber like me. And one day you'll stop in the midst of climbing a mountain and be like, why am I doing this?
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know me. Like, there were so many things that God put in me, like things that I'm passionate about. I like building puzzles, but here I am climbing a mountain right now, and I don't know why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you kind of left because you felt fatherless. You went out, kind of did your own thing, and then you returned back. Why did you return back? Like, what was the reason?
That's a good one. That's a good question, man. Okay. So when you say return back, what are we referring to?
I'm referring to Christianity.
Yes. Okay, so yes, that's a great one. There came a point where it got too heavy to carry. Life got too heavy to carry. I was ready to tap out. Literally, life had me in like this UFC hold where it was like you tap out or die. Or you can do both if you want. And maybe you just don't tap out and just die. And that's how heavy it gets sometimes. And in that moment where I sat there and said, God, why leave me here to sit here and go through this, man? Like, why have you never cared for me? Why have you and my father been so, to me, felt so much the same? Like you could just care less what I'm going through or what I've had to do all this on my own. And in all of that, the crazy thing was that I had never given God the space and the silence as I sat in darkness to actually be able to speak to me. And that was probably the craziest thing, to actually hear the voice behind all the thoughts that I have played in my head for so long. Because as I said, I lived in my head, but to hear his voice behind all those thoughts and to hear him say that, yeah, you gotta die. Okay, that's heavy. Like, you show up exactly how I thought you would, just telling me to die. And that's when he's like, no, you've got to die to who you've been for so long. You keep reinventing yourself thinking that it'll be better on the next version of you. And you're overlooking the version of you that I created well before you begin to put all these things on you to be accepted by everybody. And that was heavy, because the truth was I didn't know how to even begin to unpack it. There was so much to look back along 40 years of life and realize, like, I don't even know where to start, God. I realized that I was going to need some help. And so that's when I went back to therapy. And I had already begun to believe that I know how this is going to go. I've been to therapy before. They're going to ask me questions. I'm going to sit there and make up what I think. Like an example was, you know, all my life I've always been told that I sound funny and that I'm loud. And I don't know why I am. And I used to blame it on things like, well, you know, this is just how my family is. We're all loud. And that's when God said, now I'm going to show you how I can work in these settings to help you start to peel back layers of you that you feel like you'll never get through. And he began to show me things while I was sitting there in therapy, like mid-sentence, talking, throwing out excuses. And he was like, the reason why you've been so loud all your life is because as a child, you were never seen. You were never heard. Everybody looked over you. Everybody just walked past you. And so you felt like if you were the loudest in the room, whether they heard you or not, somebody was going to hear you. And so you've always been loud. You've always felt like you needed to scream because you felt like the louder you screamed, the more people would hear you. And that was just one of many things that he began to just show me. And he began to open up doors and moments of my life that I had buried, that I never wanted to face. And he was like, it's time to face these things. And he began to just show me things that created the initial pain in my life, the hurt in my life, that allowed me to show up differently than how I had originally began. And as he showed me that, he loved me through it all. Like, he was like, and I never stopped loving you, no matter how far you got from the person you didn't want to be, the person I created you to be. I never stopped loving you. I love you just as much now as I loved you then. Nothing's ever changed. And more important, and this was a heavy one, to get to that point where you hate yourself so much, and for somebody to say that, and I forgive you for everything you've done, not only to yourself, but all the hurt that you're sitting there thinking about that you've done to others, I forgive you. It ripped me apart. Like it ripped everything off me. It ripped every piece off me. It ripped me. It was like in that moment, he dropped me, and every piece of stone that I had put on my version of me that wasn't me just shattered off of me. And it left me there vulnerable and naked. And that's when he began to put pieces on me that belonged to me. He began to remind me who I was. He began to remind me like who he created me to be, outside of like who I felt like I needed to be. And
what are some examples of that? Like who he created you to be?
Like God gave me a voice when I was born that he knew was different than everybody else's. And as much as I wanted to run from it, he gave me that voice because it was a gift. I didn't want the gift. I didn't like the gift. Mm-hmm. Nobody else liked the gift. So why would I want it? But the whole time he had a plan for that gift. But the thing is, I was too busy running my own plans. So the funny thing is that you can recognize I'm gifted at getting close to women. And so I'll use something that he's gifted me with for my own benefit. Mm-hmm. I'll use it for my own gain. Instead of saying, God, you had a plan for this the whole time, and I was supposed to use this the way you had planned. Mm-hmm. I used something that you gave me as a gift for my own benefit. I used it for evil, to do things that hurt other people because of my own hurt. And he just began to show me things about my life that I was like, wow, like I thought that I had to be this. I had to be this simply a provider and to make everybody else happy. Who cares whether I'm happy? And he was like, see, the thing is that you're seeking happiness. in life. You're wanting to be happy. You've achieved some happy moments, haven't you? You've gotten a lot of great things. You've succeeded at certain things. You've obtained a lot of items. Didn't those things make you happy? So where's the happiness right now? He said, how about this? Let me exchange that happiness that you keep seeking for my joy. And know that in the exchange of this joy, know that there are going to be moments where you're not going to feel happy. You're not going to maybe smile through those moments. But that never changes the fact that my joy, it's going to stick to you to where I don't want you just to act like it doesn't hurt or you don't feel it. I want you to feel it and still know that you can experience my joy. You can still experience my peace, not because you can change it or because it's just going to fix itself, but because you know that I'm in this battle with you right now. I'm walking alongside you in this situation right now. You're not by yourself. You don't have the power to change it, but know that it's going to work out for your good and my glory. And that was like, okay, so I can know that when I walk with you, I can experience joy regardless of what's going on in the circumstances right now. And I can know that it's not going to work out the way I think it may work out. It's not going to work out the way I have pictured in my head, but it's still going to work out for my good and your glory. Hey, bro, listen, you shattered my last life. I ain't got nothing to go back to. So let's do it. Yeah. Let's do it. And that took surrender. Understand it. That's another thing. Okay, so I just have to throw this out there real quick. Surrender. Surrender is something I never learned. Surrender was something I always looked at as weakness. Surrender was something where, no matter what, have you ever seen Zorro surrender and truly surrender? Have you ever seen your favorite cowboy star surrender? I didn't grow up with a lot of TV, but when I started to watch it and started to know what it looked like, even if it was just on a small black and white TV that we finally got, I realized that surrender was something that it was not an option. You push through it. You achieve it at all costs. So to surrender something to someone that I had not had a great relationship with, that took a level of humbleness to say, I can't do this without you. There wasn't a one time of me doing that. There are times even in my marriage now where I'm like, I can't do this without you. She's driving me crazy and I can't do anything about it. I want to just showcase the emotion that you know I love to go through, which is anger. Let me just go to anger right now. But instead, I'm going to surrender this to you right now. And I'm going to let you do what you do. And when I tell you I have seen him work in those moments of surrender in a crazy way, I wish I had time to share some of the stories. But when I say that I have watched God say, all right, somebody, hold my water. It's my time. It was moments where I'm like, okay, why didn't I do that in the beginning? I don't know why I struggled with this so long until I finally said, I surrender. I know better now. So that is what has called me back home, because I felt very much like the prodigal son, and that there was a father there that ran to me. He didn't say, he wasn't standing on the porch with that look like, yeah, come on back. Knew you'd come back. See, all that time you was messing up. Look at you, man. I'm ashamed of you. Can't believe you did that. No. He saw me coming out down the street in the darkness, and he ran to me, and he embraced me, and he called back, and he said, my son's back home. We're throwing a party tonight. Man, make sure we pull out the fine china, and let's get the good drinks out. I'm gonna go ahead and turn some more water to wine. We're gonna party right now, and we're gonna celebrate the fact that my son has come back home, not only to me, but to his authentic self, to who I created him to be. He's not walking in what he thought was best for him anymore. He wants to know how he wants me to walk, and I'm walking according to his plan, his purpose for my life. And I'm learning new things about myself every day. And it doesn't just show up in my personal life, but also in my professional life. It allows me to show up at my job as a new creation, different from how I had been walking. So it allows me to meet people in their own hurt the same way he met me in mine, because it's not just good enough that I've returned home to my father. As I get to know him more, I become a reflection of him, and I begin to reflect that same reflection to others. Not so that I can get the glory, but so that I can let them know I would have never got here if it hadn't been for going back home to my true self and to the Father that created me this way.
Yeah. So we're coming to a close. I have 3 questions for you left.
All right. Just 3. All right.
When it comes to mental health, it seems like there's an epidemic of it in today's world, like mental health issues. How did we arrive at this point, and what can be done about it currently?
Okay, so how we arrived to it. We arrived to it. I mean, basically, I just told you the story of how a lot of us arrived to it. We live life out of pain, out of hurt. Some of us, you know, not to say that some of us aren't born with certain things that cause us to wake up anxious, depressed every day. There are some people that are on medication, and I'm glad for them. I'm glad that they're seeking, because, you know, there are so many people that walk through life every day carrying pain that nobody sees. They know it's there. Sometimes they wish they could ignore it. Sometimes they cope with it with addictions or whatever. But it's something that has to be addressed. We are in a place right now in the current society that we're in where it's not a ghost anymore that people are struggling. I feel like the pandemic made it to where people had to sit down and sit right next to their pain. And then the world said, oh, by the way, you can't leave. You got to stay indoors. So I got to stay indoors with him, and I got to stay indoors with all these other people that trigger my pain, and I got to face this stuff now, and I don't want to. So maybe I can like sit here in the house and nurse myself with liquor or whatever. But it's now a place where people are realizing that there's a name for it. It's seen whether you see it or not. It's important to deal with it. It's important to face it. Not for anybody else. Yes, it'll benefit everybody around you. But it starts with you seeing the importance of doing it for you. But it starts with you realizing that you matter, that you're valuable, that it's okay, that everything you felt, it matters, and that you matter enough to say, I'm going to, for a change, instead of taking care of everybody else or doing something for everybody else, I'm going to take the step to do something for me. I don't know how this is going to look. I don't know how this is going to feel, but I'm going to take the next step to start to invest back in me. Not my 401k, not my stocks, and not my family, but into me. Because the greatest investment is the investment of you. And that looks like, you know what? I may not have anything else to show for. I may not ever grow up with a large bank account, but I came home to me. I came home, I sat down with somebody or in a group setting, or however you choose to do it. I don't think there is one way to do it, but I think to face you and to begin to unpack pain and begin to unpack trauma and begin to deal with things, it's going to take you to step out of what was normal. And what's been normal for so long is you just suck it up. You move on from it. Don't worry about it. We all carry it, man. You don't see my book bag? And it's like, cool. So y'all made that normal. But it's time to change from what's always been normal to say, I'm tired of carrying this. I'm tired of being this guy. I'm tired of being this girl. I don't want to live like this anymore. Maybe even down to the point of I hate me. So when you hate something, you got to do something about it. And I think one of the phrases that really fueled me was a phrase that my sister-in-law gave me when it said the pain of change or change happens when the pain of change. Hold on, let me get it right. That's why I should have got it tattooed on my arm. Shoot, now I forgot.
It's basically the pain is staying the same.
Yes, that's it. Yes. Thank you so much. Hopefully you cut that.
You can repeat it.
Yes. So yes, and that's why I should have got it tattooed on my arm. But yes, she sent me something through a text message one day, and it said, "Change happens when the pain of staying the same is worse than the pain of change." And that hit me. That was like, that is exactly how I would describe the pain I'm in right now. I am in pain, and I am tired of staying or being myself. So there is no other choice now than to make some changes. I don't know what those changes are going to look like. I don't know how they, where it'll come from or who, but that's the beauty of trusting a God who will send people into your life, who will send people around you, who will put you in certain spaces that you're like, okay, this is uncomfortable. Yes, I know it's going to be uncomfortable. But understand that uncomfortable feeling is what produces change. That uncomfortable feeling, everything about this right now is saying, run. But don't run away. Run into it. Run into it. I promise you that if you run into that pain, the changes that start to happen will be worth every investment that you could have ever made into yourself, because you will start to see a different version of yourself. Other people will start to experience a different version of you. And not only will it benefit you, because it's not just an investment for you. Yes, that's how it initially looks. But it's an investment that will begin to change your entire generation. And that's what I mean by my son. He begins to experience my changes. So as he watches my changes, he listens to my podcast, he begins to listen to the stories of other men. He's like, okay, so what I thought was normal, what I have seen over the first 10 to 12 years of my life, what I thought was normal is not normal. I don't have to hide behind this. I don't have to live up to this. You're proud of me anyway, even if I don't do anything. That changes everything. That flips a switch that says, okay, all right, it takes a little bit of the stress off me. It takes a little bit of the pressure off me, because already my dad is proud of me. And so that is why I'm so passionate about the mental health space, because I recognize how I lived for so long and how so many others that I meet, that I interact with, what they're carrying. And it's not my job to be like, oh, what's that? But it's my job to display and showcase the light that I carry now, to shine a light onto their darkness, not to point it out, but just to show them what I've been through without hiding it, to say, you know what, there's a life for you in this light that you want to step into, but it's up to you. You got to take that step. We talked about fear. Sometimes fear will keep you from it. But when you step into the light with all your baggage, with all your hurt, and you take that step of beginning to undress and take off all the pieces of you that don't belong to you, that's when you're going to find a naked version of you, preferably, not actually. Please don't take your clothes off.
Not physically.
But know that there's a version of you up underneath all of that you will love so much, because it's truly you. You don't have to try to figure out how to be you. It's just you. It's who you were created to be. It's who you will love being, because you won't have to continuously adjust or make up or cover up and because of what everybody else is telling you. You're living out the full you in front of everybody. And when you let God go along with you on that journey, man, listen, I promise you, it'll bring you to tears. I did my best to hold him back on this podcast, but it not because I don't want to express it, but because I also recognize that God has put me in certain places to deliver a message, and I don't ever want. I can get in the car and cry, but I don't want my emotions to to begin to drive this car of the message that he has me taking wherever I go. And so there are times where I'm not as lucky and my emotions just spill out, and I gather myself up and I finish. But I recognize how important this message is, how important this message of God's love, how important this message of mental health, how they go together. They're not a separate thing. You choose which one you want to do. No, they work hand in hand. God works right in therapy. He did it for me. He can do it in you. He can do it with you, together, as a package. And so that's why I'm so passionate about it.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. Where can people find you and your podcast?
So people can find me in Charlotte. I am in Charlotte. I am not hard to find. No, you can find me on social media. I would say most of my social media tags are either Rob, R-O-B, _ no more, which is MOORE. It's a runoff of my name because I'm Rob No More. Or you can find me easily at God's Glory and Men's Real Stories, which is the podcast that God called me to create and start. Yes, it is centered around men's stories. They're real stories, just as you heard today. Some may be the stories of men. Sometimes it may just be conversations. But regardless, it's a great community for men and women who want to listen just because they're curious or because they want to listen for the men or for their young men. But it's a space for people to come and feel safe to be themselves. Not the person they have to feel like they have to be for everybody else, but it's a safe space for people to put down and take off and address the stuff that they've been carrying, the way they've been feeling, the issues they face, the stuff that they want to hide normally on social media, because social media is only a place where you put the good stuff. Nobody wants to see that you're being evicted or you lost your car or your wife wants to divorce you or whatever. Nobody wants to hear about that. But in this safe space, I want to hear about it all. And I want to meet you in the middle. And that's what I do. I meet men where they're at, with whatever they're going through. And we talk about it. And we in a sense, we get naked so other men can come out of their own darkness to realize they're not by themselves. And that's what God called me to do. And that's where I'm at. That's what I plan to do. Like I said, I'm called into the lives of men. And so I think that's how we met. And I just feel like it's extremely important. It's important.
Yeah. One last question before you go. What does the world need more of today?
You know, we're going into 2024. That was good. We're going into 2024, and every year I pick a word of the year. And in 2023, my word was purpose. In 2022, my word was authenticity. And my word for 2024 is love. And I know it seems very cliche to say that the world needs love. But see, I recognize that all love is not the same, and that people show up and be like, let me show you some love. And I say it all the time, that if people could see your love tank, if you had a gauge on you like a car that showcased how much love you have to give, most people would realize that their love has been on E for a long time, and that the love that they're working from is not even real love because they don't love themselves. You can't give what you don't have. You can't give what you don't give yourself. This world doesn't just need love. This world doesn't just need God. This world needs people who will show up by loving themselves the way God loves them and being a reflection of him. I recently saw in comments where a person was like, man, we need God. And they're right. But God has called us to be a reflection of him. Mm-hmm. This world needs us showing up the way Christ showed up, with his love and his compassion and his grace and his kindness and his forgiveness and all the different fruits of the Spirit that should blossom from us. So if this world could truly get anything from us, it would be to show up that way. Because imagine a world where all of us showed up in that way, and how we would interact with each other, how we would interact with the earth, interact with everything. It would be exactly what God called for us to do and to be. It would be exactly what heaven would look like. And I think that's what this world needs.
Great. Well, again, Robert, thank you so much for joining here, and I'm looking forward to more discussions with you.
Yeah, no, we're definitely going to do this again. I look forward to it.
All right. Take care.
Awesome. You too.
Yep.